NRL Magic Round, live from Brisbane. New Zealand Warriors up against the Panthers. Let's take a look at the two teams line up. Hey team, welcome back into the Warriorholic. Another chance to review the team before we head into another challenging game. Seems like we're in Groundhog Day at the moment. Every week we seem to be coming up against even more and more difficult team and losing more players along the way. Shit. Anyway, Magic Round, one of those awesome rounds of the year where everyone gets together up in Brisbane. A lot of people who interact online get a chance to meet face to face. I'm sure the Warriors Nation boys will be organising another get together like they had last year. Kiwis spilling out the windows at that hotel up in Brisbane. Such an awesome sight. One of these days I'm going to get there, but unfortunately heading to Japan in a couple of weeks, so no travel for this Warriorholic. A little bit of a shorter episode this week. I haven't had a chance to break out all the stats, but we'll take a look at the two lineups, see how both teams are trending into this really vital matchup for the Warriors. If we look at the table, the Pars sitting there on second, three-time defending champions, points different at 72. This year it's a little bit odd. They're kind of going under the radar a little bit, I guess, with the injuries to Cleary. They're not, sitting at the top of the comp. They're sitting there in second. And a lot of teams have been so up and down. It's really hard to sort of pick that one dominant team. You could argue that it's the Sharks. Having only lost one game, doing a great job last week without Hines to beat the Storms. But even then, I don't think they've really sort of been playing the kind of footy that everyone thinks, man, they're going to be out and out favourites. So probably similar with the Panthers with all the players they've lost, but they just still find a way to get those wins done. Us, on the other hand, languishing down in 14th, minus 9 points now, 3 wins and 1 draw from our 10 games. Panthers have had the bye, obviously, so that's one positive, I guess. A lot of the teams above us have had their bye, so add 2 points, we're up on 9. If we had the bye points, that means we're only 3 points out of the 8. With a miracle win this week, who knows what could happen. As I said, I've been really busy, so I haven't had a chance to break down all the individual matchups and put up the stats like I'd normally like to, but I've put the two teams here side by side so we can kind of have a look at it position, and interestingly, the amount of experience both teams are fielding. It's crazy. The Panthers are actually probably one of the least hit by injury teams out there at the moment. I guess Nathan Cleary is a huge out, but other than that, they've got a pretty close to full strength team. For us, we're really down on numbers. So we saw on the weekend there, we lost Rocco Berry and Sean. Both of them probably out for 3 to 4 weeks, likely to come back after the bye. It just keeps happening. I think there's about 9 of our top 17 players are out at the moment. So it's pretty crazy to look how experienced this team actually lines up against the Pars, man for man. Obviously, Tane Tuolpiki just with 8 games versus 140. And Edwards, arguably the best fullback in the game right now. A lot of people would claim he is. Up against the young fella who he showed in Queensland Cup a couple of years ago. He was like the standout player, the winning player of the year, the most tackle breaks and the like. Done pretty well for us, but he just hasn't really been able to solidify that place in the first grade with a guy like Chance ahead of him, RTS as well. But with the injury to SJ, pretty funny to see my prediction about Chance moving into 6 and Tane coming to fullback played out. As I mentioned in that post-game review from the Roosters, I thought they might bring Tane in for his kicking game. Tamati Martin, not a noted kicking, but Tane's been doing a lot of kicking from fullback and cup. He has got a good long kicking game on him particularly, so I think that's why he came in. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how he goes. He's a live wire, he's young, he's energetic, he's probably full of confidence, unlike a lot of our other guys at the moment. So I think that's a good chance to sort of bring in that young energy. But yeah, purely on recent form, you got to give that match up to Edwards. Then you got Dallin up against Taruva. 199 games coming up for 200 versus just 37. But geez, Taruva's been a revelation. Off to the Tigers, is it next year, I think? Bit of a shame, the Panthers really looked after him coming through the grades. Apparently he was living in a caravan or something like that growing up. But they looked after him to basically get him through to a position where he could come into the first grade, but he's off. But having an outstanding season. Not a big guy, but geez, he makes some meters. He's a live wire. Up against Dallin, so I'd heard a bit of a rumour through a couple of my social medias where people I don't really interact too much with had sent me DMs claiming that Dallin was being shopped to Super League, which I thought was a bit of bullshit, but I see a post there today that one of the Super League teams is actually after him, so maybe there's a little bit of truth to that rumour. But yeah, experience-wise and the way they play, they're actually very similar players. You'd have to claim that Taruva's in a bit better form, particularly try-scoring wise. But next up in the centres, Ali Lauteo makes his much-awaited return after his debut in Croker's 300 match last year. Doing that hammy, didn't manage to get back into first grade last season, has struggled to get in with Rocco Berry leading the way this year. But he comes in up against Tago, who's only in 56 games into his career, but he seems like he's been around for years, that guy. This will be a really interesting one. Both guys X Factor, very hard runners, put on a hit, but I've been waiting for Ali to come back. I'm a huge Rocco fan, but I do like the fact Ali's unpredictable. He's one of those guys who can just pull something out of nowhere. I think we've really been missing that lately. He's a really strong runner. He very rarely gets put on the ground, one-on-one. Will drag guys forward. So, form-wise and experience, you've got to give this to Tago, one of the top centres in the comp, but I'm really excited to see how Ali goes up against him. I think he'll really hold his own. May surprise a few people. Adam Pompey, bit of a mixed bag last week with his combination with Ed, which I don't put too much down on him. I thought he actually stood up really well against Joey Manu. Put a couple of steps on and got around him himself. Great kicking. So I'm more than happy that he's staying in, and I wouldn't be surprised if he cements his position there for the foreseeable future, as long as he stays healthy. Up against Taylor May, the tattooed man. Geez, that's funny. Never understood why people tattoo their own names on themselves, like you're going to forget. But yeah, he's another outstanding player. Hard as nails, runs like a prop. But I think Adam, more than capable of handling him, is great on defense. Big wide wingspan, as I've said before. He'll put that step on May as well. So it's not a bad matchup. Particularly going on last year's form. A little bit harder to tell with Adam having not played a huge amount of minutes over this season. Next up, Marcelo Montoya comes back in after a week of being dropped. I don't know whether you could say he was dropped for his own performance or whether it's just to try and make way for RTS to try and play on the wing there before he got injured, but I'm glad he didn't drop his head. Played well in Cup, got himself a quality try. Hopefully that little bit of freedom and a win down there in Cup will give him a little bit of confidence coming back in here. Up against a guy who's one of the biggest meter eaters in the game. Absolute handful. He's not the biggest winger in the world, but just that low centre of gravity and just a motor, it just never seems to stop. Similar styles of game, but you'd have to say that Toto is a little bit more effective at it, probably making 40 or 50 more metres on average a game than Montoya. So I hope Montoya can really step it up here. If he can win that yardage battle against Toto, that could be a big way to sort of get a bit of an advantage for us, but I think that's easier said than done. But experience-wise, both very similar. Then we've got CNK coming into 5'8". I thought this might happen. Most 5'8s are playing on the left, but I expect them to play on the right. Tamati Martin playing halfback from the left-hand side. The reason I went for that, as I mentioned previously, is just on the defence side of things. I think Tainter's a little bit too small to be dealing with these huge edge-back rowers and the centres that they've got at the Panthers there. So I think that's probably why we've seen Chance go there, a little bit more experience, probably more comfortable in the front line, even though Tane Tuolpiki has played there in recent times at Queensland Cup level and for the Kiwis A team. Up against Jack Cole, I noticed, I never remember that guy's name, the other backup halfback, got injured in Cup last week for the Panthers, so that's why he's not there. Cole only 3 games, so a bit of a discrepancy there. You'd think we'll be aiming a bit of traffic his way, but 10 years of this system in place seems to have just created an All Black-like conveyor belt of players who are able to just come up and step in. So I wouldn't underestimate that young fella with only 3 games up against the guys over 100 now. So curious to see how he goes. I don't know a huge amount about him. Then we've got Tamati Martin into the 7 role up against Jerome Luai. So we've got 2 5'8s in the unfamiliar role of halfback, though Luai's probably played a little bit more then than Tamati Martin. I guess the difference there is we've got 2 halves without a notable kicking game, and they've got 2 relatively good kickers. I think a left-right foot combination as well. I'm really curious to see how we build our shape this week without SJ there, who's been so dominant in all our plays. Every play's going through his hands. Some ways to the detriment of our left-hand side, I believe. So I feel it will be probably simplifying our attack, probably be a little bit more direct. So maybe it does create a little bit of time and space for our left-hand side. It's really hard to tell. Really hard to tell. So all in all, if you look at experience-wise, very similar. Man for man, quite a lot of similarities. What's the biggest difference? Confidence and form. These guys are coming off the back of 3 years of success. They very rarely lose two in a row. It's just something that becomes part of your culture. I'm pretty sure everyone out there who's played sport before will know what it's like when you're just in that zone. You can't miss a shot, or you can't slice a ball, whatever. It just seems to go for you. And when you're not, you can fight and you can fight, and you can never get out of it. Now, you see guys like Michael Campbell, for example, beats Tiger Woods to win a US Open, wins one more tournament, and that's it. Completely falls off the face of the earth for 20 years. The guy was good enough to beat the best golfer ever, but the form just disappeared, and that's what it can be like. So I really hope these guys can, even if they don't win, to salvage something to really come out of here with confidence heading into the Dolphins. But you've got to give the edge in the backs, as we will probably most positions, to the Pars there. Similarly, heading into the forward pack here, shit, man for man, I think we match up okay, but it's just their ability to play as a pack. Like bloody wolves, mate, just hunting together. AFB up against Leota, very similar. Leota with a little bit more speed. AFB just as powerful, both getting similar amount of meters, but Leota does it at a much higher pace. Experience-wise, almost the same. Size-wise, AFB has a little bit on him, but much of a muchness. Maybe you can give AFB a slight edge here because he is probably one of our actually genuine informed players at the moment. Then you've got Wade Egan up against Mitch Kenny. Wade Egan off the back have been signed till the end of 2027 now. Hopefully, that gives him a little bit of confidence, know what his future is going to be. Game-wise, they're very similar. Egan, a little bit more variety to his game. Hasn't really been able to get it going. Passing been a little bit laboured recently. Not sure if that's anything to do with the elbow or just fatigue. But no Freddie Lussick this week, so he's going to have to play big minutes again. Up against a guy, Mitch Kenny, who's not a traditional hooker. He's maybe similar to your Brandon Smith, hooker come 13, more noted for his defense and his running rather than being a really creative hooker. But I spoke about this over the past couple of weeks. A lot of the top teams, they don't have that creative hooker. They just got a guy who does the job and is a great defender. Croker from Manly's another one. Billy Walters, not the most creative hooker in the comp, but they complement the playmakers around them. So, in recent form, this one's going to be quite even as well. Bunty Afoa up against James Fisher-Harris. Bunty's actually bigger than James Fisher-Harris, but definitely doesn't have the same amount of speed and the motor that James has got. I think he can match him, he probably can contain him okay for the first stint on defense, but his offense, he may struggle to get any momentum up against Leota and James Fisher-Harris. The Fish will probably be looking to put in a big performance, show these boys what he's going to bring to us next year. He doesn't play as big in minutes as AFB, and as we've seen from Mitch Barnett when he's been in the front row from us, but have a really great rotation. So look for some energy from JFH, and hopefully Bundy can try and contain him a little bit, at least in the first stint. Jackson Ford up against Luke Garner. Similar styles. Garner probably a little bit taller, probably a little bit lankier, but similar styles of footy, both huge motors, never stop, great on defense. Kind of cancel each other out for me. Like Garner's probably not a guy that stands out. Not going to no one talks about him for state of origin or anything like that. But like a lot of these guys who come into the Panthers, they just do a job at a level that is beyond what you'd expect from their capability. So pretty even matchup there. Mitch Barnett up against Liam Martin will be an interesting one. Again, a lot of similarities, similar size, high energy footballers, both put on a massive hit. I don't have their weights there, but you'd imagine that Martin has a little bit more to him. But, Mitch Barnett in the talks, in the frame for State of Origin this year. Martin, a very experienced State of Origin player. Not a huge difference, man for man. I think Mitch Barnett can more than match him. Perhaps the speed of Martin. couple of years younger. I don't know that for sure, but I'd imagine he's a couple of years younger. Maybe a slight advantage there. And next up, we've got Tohu up against Yo. 230 versus 229 game shit. You would have thought that Tohu would have had more than Yo. Yo doesn't seem to have been around as long as him, but very similar. Similar in their approach to the game. They're both hands-on, the footy a lot, involved in most of the attacking plays. But you'd have to say the energy and motor and speed of Yo is a level above Tohu at the moment. He seems to be struggling a bit with the fatigue for the huge minutes he's had to play, but we know Tohu won't take a backward step. But yeah, I'm going to have to give that edge to Yo. He'll be looking to really stamp his mark on the game and show that he should be in that 13 jersey for New South Wales, even though I don't really think he should, just personally. Other options I would go for there. Then looking at the bench, again, experience-wise, we've got it over them. Dylan Walker on his day, I think, cancels out and exceeds what Lowry offers. Tomale up against Lindsay Smith. Lindsay Smith, a little bit of a taller player, both similar amount of games. Tomale coming off what I thought was his best first-grade game of the season last year. Jazz up against Eisenhuth. Eisenhuth, always get that one wrong. Basically the same amount of experience there. Slightly different type of players. Eisenhuth more of a, trying to think of a polite way to say this. He's not perhaps as energetic and high speed as Jazz, but he's one of those guys who just, Christian Welsh or one of those kind of guys who just keeps going forward, keeps making his tackles. And then Jacob Laban up against Maverick Geyer. Pretty sure this guy's Brandon Smith's son. God, they look alike when Brandon Smith had his longer hair. Just 4 games each. So, look, our bench is man for man. If this is how we line up, I think we match up quite well. So it just goes to show what difference it makes when you're playing well as a team and with confidence. Man for man, there's not that many players, particularly in the forward packs, that you just look at and say, they should be that much better than us, but they just are. Perhaps it's an example that we are trying to play their team approach, but playing it as individuals. Something's got to click, and I just really, this is no jip at SJ, but maybe not having him there, not being able to rely on him means that each person focuses on their role a little bit more. We play with a little bit more balance. Man for man is nothing. Team for team, light years ahead of where we are, but looking at this, it's not an impossibility. They're slightly off their game. Somehow we click. Who knows? So just quickly, I won't put them up on screen here. I wanted to mention our reserve. Zion, Ed Cossey, Paul Roach, Tanner Stowers-Smith, and Ben Farr. So the word I'm hearing is Dylan Walker is not looking good and probably won't play. There's your 14 gone. Your hooker cover and your lock cover. And I'm hearing whispers one more senior player from the forward pack may well be out as well. So this is going to bring in the questions. Who actually lines up come game day? We know Webby loves a smoke screen. I have a fair idea who this other player is who's out, but I can't really say because I haven't confirmed directly with someone, that would 100% know. So I'm not going to say who it is, but my feeling is Zion will come in, and then it's down to Paul Roach and Ben Farr for that 14 role. Now, I don't know which way Webby will think, but this is the first time in a while. I'm not sure if we've even seen him on the extended bench. Ben Farr, for me, I said it a couple of days ago, he's the guy I'm bringing in at 14. I think Egan, he'll play 80, so you don't need that hooker cover, but with what we've got going on with Chance playing at 5'8", I want to be able to replace him and move him to fullback if necessary, if it's not working. Tane potentially could come on. I still don't know, to be honest, whether they line up that way or that's a smoke screen and maybe Tane does play it in 6 and Chance is at the back. But I want Ben Farr there just for the versatility. We don't really have anyone on the bench at the moment who can cover backs. So I'd be bringing Ben Farr in for a debut at 14 and Zion in there with Jazz and Ale. No idea if that's how Webby will go, but I think the speed, the overall versatility, and I think he's a better half. than Roach. If you're going purely for hooker cover, then Roach is probably the better option. Keep an eye out, guys. Yeah, as I said, it's as they line up, it's pretty good, but I think Walker will drop out, and the other player is quite a big loss. So makes it even more challenging for us. But in some ways, it excites me. If these young guys do get a go, how do they step up? Often you get those young kids who haven't experienced too much pain against the Panthers, so they just come out and think they'll give it a go, and maybe they surprise them. The Panthers definitely wouldn't have done too much video on Chance playing at 5'8", so there's a few things that that will be unexpected about the game. So what do you guys reckon? What excites you most? What are you most worried about? What would you realistically like to see? For me, I dream of winning. I dream of a win against the Pars being a turnaround for our season. Realistically, if we could hold them for under 30 points and us score 3 tries, I think that would be a massive confidence boost. My biggest fear is that we just, have that game like we had against the Dolphins in round 27 last year, where things just don't come together and we get pumped, and that could completely ruin our confidence even going into the Dolphins next week. So, like I said, I'd like to see us stay within 12 points of them and not let them get much more than 30. They only scored 16 points last week. Hopefully, hopefully that's a bit of a reflection of how things will be this week. Up the mighty wires. For those who go and enjoy Magic Round, see you all on Sunday night to celebrate a great win. Up the mighty wires. Let's go.